Erik Malinowski. Welcome to the Other 51. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me on.
So we usually spend the usual first 10 minutes of the podcast or so talking about Hamilton. I know you're a Hamilton agnostic, so the good news is that's more time to talk about the other pop culture obsession of my life, The Simpsons.
Excellent.
So obviously you wrote the great piece for Deadspin, 4 or 5 years ago now, on Homer at the Bat?
We're about a week or two away from the 5th anniversary of that piece running.
All right. So how big a Simpsons nerd are you in general?
I am the sort of the prototypical, first 8 seasons nerd.
All right. Yeah, same here.
And having said that, it's been, I will be the first to admit, far too long since I have revisited a lot of those episodes in earnest.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very much of a generation where those were, original, coming on every Sunday during a very formative period in my life.
Right.
Yes. My comedic sensibilities and pop culture appreciation and things like that.
Yeah, same here. And then when it went to Thursday, obviously a big deal. So, kind of looking back at the Homer at the Bat piece with some time. I mean, what was it about that episode specifically that kind of drew you in to write about it?
I mean, it really just kind of hit. It was kind of the perfect nexus of my interests. I mean, just the show itself, and then just becoming of age really as a baseball fan back then, and then sort of looking back on it kind of through the lens of history and just kind of it was one, in some ways it was kind of those things that I sort of taken for granted. And when I went during the time when I was pitching and conceiving of the piece, it was one of those things where I kind of looked back and I really kind of took a deep look at not just kind of the different machinations that brought that episode about, but sort of the actual characters, the players that were in that episode, and the ways that history had treated them over the years, and sort of the twists and turns that each of their careers and personalities had taken. So I thought that, especially at that time, it was kind of a ripe, kind of the perfect opportunity to really delve in with both feet. And I mean, right around the time that I thought of that idea to do that piece, I mean, we were literally only about a couple months away from the 20th anniversary. So we had sort of a built-in time peg, which, when you're a writer thinking of ideas for pieces, that's gold right there. So I just figured all the planets were aligning just kind of perfectly.
Yeah. Is that your favorite episode?
Yeah.
Really?
One of those things where there's Hank Scorpio,
right.
you only move twice, and Lisa on Ice and things like there's a few that kind of bubble up to the surface pretty quickly. But I mean, like I said, at the risk of overthinking it, I mean, that one for me just has endless rewatchability factor.
Yeah, I haven't watched. I'm like you, same age, same kind of growing up with it, and it's been too long since I've watched them. My favorite episode was always The Beer Baron, Homer versus the 18th Amendment, which is either season 8 or season 10. I forget which one, but it's not a.
It's grandfathered into that golden era,
right? It's just at the edge of that era, and I'm very excited because my daughter is 6, and so we're just kind of getting
coming of age now. She can start to appreciate this.
Exactly, and she's just coming at that age where I can start introducing her. And I'm trying to avoid doing the typical dad thing where I overthink it and try to get the right episodes in line for her to watch it and just watch it. I'm lucky though; she does theater, and the youth theater she does is doing Music Man.
Oh, perfect.
Monorail.
There you go. So just bring the monorail episode. There you go.
Exactly. And that's probably one you would start with anyway, or be very early in the introduction of it. Right. So,
and either that or Mr. Plow.
Yeah, that was the other one I had thought of too. Now I'm going to be singing Mr. Plow in my head the rest of the day, and that's awesome.
Worse things to get stuck in your head, let's be honest.
That's true. So currently, you're not writing about The Simpsons anymore. You're writing about the Golden State Warriors. And so when's the book come out?
So the book is slated to come out this October, so sometime during training camp, just ahead of the upcoming season.
Okay, and how's it going?
It's going well. I'm in that sort of I'm in the calm, like when a hurricane is passing over, and you breach the eye wall, and then it's very calm. Like that's where I am right now, because I've submitted the manuscript, and just at the end of literally like on the 30th or 31st, it was due at the end of the calendar year. And they said it would take about 6 weeks for edits to come back. So we're sitting firmly in that
Okay.
window where, any day I could get a 350 page Word document with track changes, in my inbox, and then I'll probably have 4 to 6 weeks to turn it around. But it's a nice window right now. I think my goal basically is to sort of get all the edits done by April 1 or just around the time that NBA playoffs start, which I guess is around April 15th.
Okay.
Because obviously with the Warriors winning so many games, they're going to be pretty busy come playoff time again. So it would be nice to kind of have that off my plate and be able to focus on playoffs. So that's the plan right now.
So how long a manuscript are we talking that you finished?
Well, I promised it to them initially in my proposal at 80 to 100. I've fact checked previously. I've been a fact checker for a long time, and I fact checked 4 books in that time. So as far as that goes, I had a pretty good idea of kind of like how long the book would be, or for the story that I wanted to tell. I ended up filing it at just a little bit over 110,000 words. So that number will come down, and then it will go back up again, maybe come down again. But it's the idea. I want people to kind of hold the book in your hand and feel like you're not getting cheated. That you're getting everything that you paid for.
So and how long did it take you to write?
Probably about 7 or 8 months altogether. I mean, I started, we sold the proposal, like I think it was during the first round of the playoffs. So, late April, early May. And I tried to get it started sort of during the playoffs. I mean, I had all of these ideas, everything sort of swimming in my head. And there was really only so much that I could do while playoffs were still going on. So once the finals were done, mid-late June, I kind of started it. And then the Kevin Durant stuff on July 4th. And that not only delayed, the rest of what I had originally proposed, but in essence, added thousands of words and delayed what it is I was trying to do probably by weeks. But that's why we have the summer. That's why we have the off season. And I learned the virtues of, I used a Scrivener, the writing program, which several of my friends have written books. They rave about it. And so I discovered kind of halfway through the process that it has this little, I think it's called project targets.
Okay.
So you can actually set, you can set a daily word limit that you want to reach, which is great. You can set a word limit for your entire document, which is awesome. And you can set yourself like a deadline date, and it will tell you, TK days until due. And let me tell you, there's a big motivating factor when you see that number go down by 1,000 words a day, 1,500 words a day, but you see that date drawing ever closer, and it's amazing how fast you can write when you're staring at that little box down in the left-hand corner of your screen. That was one of the things I learned.
Yeah, Scrivener. I wrote my dissertation in Scrivener. I loved it.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's great. And do you know about the I tell everyone about this. Do you know about the transcription option that you have in Scrivener?
I think I might know about this, but refresh my memory.
So it's you create like in Scrivener. This is riveting podcasting, by the way. But
I know,
in Scrivener,
right?
you create the like a double window. So you have like a window up top and bottom. You can have an audio file playing in it and typing and transcribing in the top window, and they're like really easy to learn key commands. So like pause, go back 5 seconds, and that. So if you're transcribing, you can do it all within Scrivener and don't have to like juggle back and forth between something. It's really helpful.
Into that, I actually use for my transcription here's another pro writer tip, hashtag. I use a web app called otranscribe.com.
Okay.
Where it's a free website. You just upload your audio file, and it's kind of basically the same thing that you're talking about, where you kind of type and you can you press the escape key to pause, and then it automatically goes back 2 seconds every time you restart it. So it's increased my transcription by 30-40% probably. It's amazing.
Which is awesome, because transcription is the worst, right?
Is literally the worst part of being a writer. Literally the worst part.
And I'm the guy who picked for his dissertation to do hour-long interviews with writers and had 30 of them to transcribe. So it's really my fault, but that was really there are many mornings when I regretted that decision.
The struggle is real. You know what I'm talking about.
It totally is. So tell me, let's back up a little bit on the process of the book. And obviously the Warriors have had this incredible run for the last couple years, winning the title, then going 73 and losing to Cleveland last year, and Steph Curry and all. So how did the idea for a book about them come about? Like, walk me through that whole process.
Well, to back up even not even a little much further, when I had been a fact checker at Wired magazine for 7 years, give or take, in San Francisco, and that was great. But then it became a time where I wanted to. Nobody wants to be a fact checker forever. That's the goal. As great as it was, and for as much as I learned in that process, and it was really fortuitous. Around that time, Wired started a sports blog, so I, literally moved across the hall from the magazine to the website, and I was in essence the sports editor of Wired.com. And I did that for a year. And I got to write some really cool pieces, but one of the most important pieces that I wrote while I was there was in April of 2011. And I'd read like just an AP blurb in the paper about how the Warriors were one of the latest or first teams to explore installing these newfangled SportView motion tracking cameras throughout Oracle Arena.
Okay.
And it talked about how they've got these new owners, and they're going to try to maybe it can help them revamp turn around all these years of losing. Maybe this investment in technology and analytics and all that, maybe it's going to even turn around a sad sack franchise like the Warriors. And I thought, all right, well, that could be interesting. So I contacted them. I was literally walking through the rafters of Oracle Arena with their VP of player personnel, and he's we're leaning over the edge of these catwalks, and he's pointing out the cameras to me, and I end up writing the story about how the Warriors they're going for it. They've got new owners, they're investing in this technology, they're rock bottom. They've been rock bottom for so many years. What do they really have to lose? And gosh, you just never know. Maybe they can turn things around. They got this young talent. You just never know. And I guess years later, you throw enough darts, you hit the bullseye.
Right.
So these ended up being pretty prescient. So, it was sort of in the middle of last season. I had been covering them for a couple of years for Sports on Earth. I was freelancing, doing a lot of Warriors coverage and going to a lot of games. And I think it was probably right around the All-Star break when they were 48-4 going into last year's All-Star break, which is just completely insane.
Right.
And I kind of got the feeling that maybe the time was right for this. I certainly didn't know that anyone else was really kind of working on something.
Okay.
I didn't really overthink it. Like I didn't start to think like, why should I be the one to do this? I just kind of thought, well, this makes a lot of sense, and I would have the time to do it. I'm not, I don't have a staff position anywhere, and I'm not like a beat that has to, write up every single thing that's happening with this team. I'm close enough to the team that I kind of know what's going on, and I can talk about it knowledgeably, but I would also have the bandwidth to actually sort of undertake a project like this. So, long story short, I ended up contacting an agent I met from my years at Wired, and we put together a proposal and we sent it out. I remember the Warriors were 69-9. There were 4 games left in the season, and we sent it out. And that was I guess that was kind of like a buy low moment for the Warriors, because they've literally got to win their last 4 games in order to get this history, and they're playing playing San Antonio twice in those 4 games, and like really, what are the odds that they're actually going to be able to pull that off? And when they did win those 4 games and hit 73, I figured now it's probably going to sell, because if nothing else, they can sell the 73. Like they've now set a record that likely may never be eclipsed. And one of the things I was really careful with the proposal was I never wrote it contingent in any way on them actually winning the title last year.
Okay.
Which I just thought like made sense from a practical standpoint, because you can't really predict what's going to happen. You just don't know. As we saw, even the most probable of scenarios can always happen in the end. But at the same time, it would have kind of felt weird for me, because in some ways I would have felt like I had then some sort of emotional investment in the outcome.
Right.
And I'm covering, I covered every home playoff game for the last couple of years now. And it's like, I didn't grow up a Warriors fan. I didn't grow up in the Bay Area. I grew up in New York. I was a Knicks fan growing up. So, the Warriors winning or losing any given game, does not affect me deep down in any way. So, it would have been weird for me to kind of alter that calculus in some way. So it seems smart, and for all those reasons, I was just like, look, I didn't even spell it out in the proposal. If they win the title, we go in this direction, and if they lose the title, and I even wrote, I said, if they lose the title, they've got a good shot then to sign Kevin Durant.
Right.
And that's just the events that ended up happening. And so instead of going in one direction, we went in another direction. And it just and just the kind of the more I thought about it, I just realized, especially covering this team the last couple of years, I realized that their ascension has just been so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I hear people talk about Warriors fatigue or, oh, they're so good, I'm so tired of hearing about them. I mean, there was a stretch, this will be the 5th year in a row that they make the playoffs. Before this current streak started, they did not qualify for the playoffs in 18 out of 19 seasons.
Woo.
It's really hard to not make the playoffs in the NBA. And I went through, the history of every team's playoff runs. I could only find one other instance in the entire history of the NBA that was more futile than that 18 out of 19 stretch, and that was the Clippers, who the Clippers once did not make the playoffs for 15 years in a row. And that's the worst that I can find, and the Warriors were the second worst. So, yeah, I mean, it just feels like this has been such a quick rise, and I wanted to write something that really sort of appreciated, that really just kind of gave everyone a sense of what all the different machinations were that went into this, all the twists and turns, the decisions that they made, all the ways that it really, frankly, could have gone horribly wrong, and it didn't. So it's more also about the decisions that they did not make. And it's all kind of framed around the new ownership coming in. It's about Steph, coming of age. It's about the team, embracing, these tenets of Silicon Valley and technology, and just kind of, just really sort of revamping the entire culture of the organization from the top all the way to the bottom, because the Warriors really, the whole organization really was in a very toxic place when this new ownership came in. And it took years for them to turn it around, but now, you're kind of seeing the fruits of all that labor. And if you ask them, they'll say that this did not happen by accident. Right. Obviously, I don't think they could have predicted they would get so good so quickly, but this was all kind of done with a plan in place, and they'll say that this is what they meant to do, and this is how they executed it.
Yeah, it can be hard. Like, my students are 18 to 21 years old, and so it can be hard to try to tell them for most of my life, most of your life. Like the Golden State Warriors, they were barely on the radar. They were kind of, I don't know if even irrelevant kind of captures it. Like, they were just this other team that was in California. Like, they weren't the Lakers. Like, the Clippers were always historically bad. And, they had a couple years with Hardaway and the Sprewell years. But other than that, they were just kind of, a team in the league. Like, they were never anything that you really thought about. And, yeah, I know it can be probably really easy to look at it and think, well, they got Steph Curry. Steph Curry is turned into this great player, and it's easy to win when you have Steph Curry. But, as a lifelong Buffalo Bills fan, I know from really bad ownership and really bad stretches of futility here. So, from your reporting and looking at what the ownership has done, how do you turn an organization? How do they turn an organization around like that, beyond just getting the once-in-a-generation player like Curry? What goes into rebuilding an organization that's so toxic into something that's so not toxic?
From sort of a very basic foundational level, you have to, if you talk to them, they'll say you create a workplace where people enjoy coming to work. I've never really heard, to hear the way that the Warriors internally talk about this team and this organization. It's not the traditional terms. It's not the way that we think about a sports organization. They talk about people coming into the workplace to work. They're talking about the players, coming to practice. These are the words that they use. And it's this is just it's just like anyone else that has an office job, and you go to a job, you want to be happy at your job. You don't want to work with a bunch of jerks. You don't want to work with people whose goals are not aligned with the same as yours. And that's a very simple thing to say. I think it's a hard thing to execute, but you have to, but in some ways you just have to be committed to it. And you have to have, you have to have executives who are going to be committed to that idea. You hire a guy like Bob Myers, to be your general manager, who has no executive experience whatsoever. He was a sports agent for 15 years. But you hire him because, he grew up a Warriors fan. He understands what this team means to the area. He has connections in the league, and he's a smart and diplomatic guy. And he's a guy who is not going to sign jerks to your roster. On some levels, it doesn't it doesn't really get more complicated than that. And obviously, there's eventually there's got to be a tipping point. Like you just need talent at some point.
Right.
You know, you have to make yourself a destination where good players are going to want to come to. And it just wasn't like that for years. Honestly, you know, the tipping point really was Andre Iguodala, you know, signing a contract in the summer of 2013. That really was it. I mean, after that, everything just kind of fell into place. You know, the next year they signed, you know, Sean Livingston for a pittance. And he's been so valuable. And then they hired Steve Kerr to be their coach, and all these things that happened. But you've got to start committed to an ideal. You've got to see it through. You got to have faith that you're going to be able to attract players that are going to want to play in that type of environment. And then at that point you just kind of hope for the best. I mean, it's like you said, you know, it's a crapshoot, and but it's worked out for them. I mean, and it is not, you know, it's not luck. It's not, oh, they're just, you know, riding off of the, you know, the amazing excellence of a player like Steph Curry. I mean, it's not like there's just so much more that goes into the equation. And if anything, I hope when people read it, they kind of come away with a greater appreciation for those sorts of things and not just think that, well, they just win because they got Steph Curry and Klay Thompson.
Right.
And a guy like Draymond Green. And by the way, a guy like Draymond Green who was never, you know, supposed to be an all-star, things like that. So I just hope that people kind of, you know, think about it on a little bit of a deeper level.
Yeah. So in terms of writing and reporting and writing on the book, you know, I talked to a lot of people who've written books for this, and it's one of those things where like every English major and every journalism major says, oh, someday I want to write a book. And it was when I was a research assistant in grad school and I would work on a couple book projects with professors that I realized, holy God, that's a ton. To do a book and to do a decent book is an unhealthy amount of work to be able to try to do. Like, it's much harder than I think a lot of people think. So from your perspective, what didn't you know about writing a book that maybe you wish you had, what do you know now that you wish you had known back when you started this?
I think that, well, I'll tell you one thing, you know, sort of looking at from going to the end of the process and looking back at the start, you know, I remember when I kind of wrapped up my manuscript and I literally printed out all the pages and kind of held it in my hand. And I just kind of had this thought to myself that, like, I mean, if you had told me at the beginning of the process that like this would be like the end product, I think it just would have psyched me out so much. Okay. So like, you know, I started, like I said, you know, earlier, like I kind of started thinking like, oh, I'm going to do it in this sort of this 80 to 100, and it ended up being like 113, I think is what it was. And I just think that would have psyched me out so much at the beginning of the process if I had known there would be all these chapters, and, you know, they're going to, you know, be in sort of the, you know, 10 to 12,000 word range, each of them. You know, I mean, I'd written stories. I think the longest single story I'd ever published before writing this was, I think it was 12,000 words, something like that. And then just the idea that, like, you're going to have to do that 9 times in order to get this done. And you're going to have to do that, like, you know, in a time frame where you're basically doing more than one of those per month.
Right.
You know, you're doing like 1.2 of those per month, you know, at like basically 8 months, you know, to pull this together. And so that, you know, in reverse, you know, terms, you know, it was actually better to sort of not go there, you know, and to just try to, you know, like I said, with Scrivener, you can set like the daily limit. Like that really was sort of a lifesaver. Just the whole idea that, like, if you can do this and sort of stick to a schedule and just kind of, you know, crank out your 800 to 1,000 words a day, like that sounds like a lot. I think if you're not like sort of in that rhythm and you're not kind of used to that, obviously that can be a lot. I think I was at the point sort of I had done, you know, I had enough staff jobs. I've certainly been freelancing for long enough where I think especially with freelancing, there's often, you know, more of a hustle and more of a grind, and you're sort of writing more in sort of a more compressed space of time. The whole idea of sort of sitting down and carving out weeks in the day to do 800 to 1,000 words was not intimidating. Right. So think about that in like times, you know, that times 100, incredibly intimidating. Right. Just to kind of not go there. And also before the process, I was not a big outliner. Okay. Not really into outlines. Like I was very much like the process of kind of I knew where I was going to start, and then we'll just kind of see where the story goes. We'll see where the characters take us, you know, the details, things like that. And that had sort of served me pretty well. And for this, I kind of realized early on in the process that that was not going to fly. This really, for me, was kind of like it was just all about organization as well. And just kind of, getting your folder system set up, doing Evernote and things like that. And just scribbling everything, like literally as soon as you think of something, scribble it down or type it into a notes document or something like that. Because you will invariably and very quickly forget it. And then it will drive you crazy. And that's counterproductive.
Right.
So, and the other thing that I found that was counterproductive early on is don't read good basketball books.
Okay.
Back, and I was thinking, I should get some inspiration, because I knew that book tone, pacing, structure, things like that, those are all going to be different than writing sort of a standard feature story. Like, it's a little too simplistic to say that, a book is not just, 12, you think of each chapter as being essentially like a feature story. It's more complicated than that.
Right.
It's not just that, it's also the tone, and it's the way you sound and things like that. Like like with books, it's a little bit more casual. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like another way to explain it, but you've got to let the reader know, hey, settle in. We got 100,000 more words to go. Don't go anywhere. But also it's going to be worth it. But just come along for the ride. So you've got to be a little bit more, I think, assuring in book tone. And so I just figured, I'm going to go read some good basketball books. I'm going to get myself inspired, And so I read, I reread, Breaks of the Game by David Halberstam. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I remember how much I love this book. But now that I'm in, like, my brain is sort of, molding into book writing mode, it completely psyched me out. And I just thought, all I could think was, why am I writing a book? I'm never going to write anything as good as Breaks of the Game. Why am I doing this? This is a loser's proposition. Why? That honestly probably set me back by like a month. I mean, it was a good thing the playoffs were still going on, because I don't know how much I could have done, but that was not helpful.
Right, because you realize kind of the it's like the Lincoln bedroom from West Wing. You realize kind of what curve you're being graded on in some respect when you're writing a book, and and this is like the David Halberstam book on basketball or something like that. It's like, oh, crap.
So I went ahead and I read the second best basketball book of all time, reread, which is The City Game by Pete Axthelm, and that was a little bit better. I love that book, but also structure wise, and that book was like thematically was a kind of different, it was similar in a lot of ways to what I wanted to do. That book is about the Knicks championship season, back in 1970, I think, and sort of following half of the book is basically, him sort of following the Knicks through that season. And this book, in a lot of ways, it goes through sort of a course of several years, but you're going through seasons, So structurally, like, there was a lot to sort of take away. And I'll say one book that really helped me sort of get through this process was my friend Molly Knight wrote this wonderful book on the Dodgers, the best team money can buy. And that one also is sort of very thematically and structurally, different sports, but actually just a whole lot of the same themes going on. And, it's a lot of behind the scenes, and it's very sort of, chronological and things like that. So, that was also a book that I actually opened that up, dozens of times during the process, where just thinking like, how do you move through a section? What's your pacing? Mm-hmm. What kind of things can we put in here? What kind of things can we cut? And that actually ended up being pretty helpful. So basically the moral of the story is, don't read David Halberstam early in the process. Maybe you'll be fine in the end.
So what's the best thing you've read lately?
Oh, goodness. Like literally today? Can we get how current here? I literally just read Chris Ballard in the New Sports Illustrated wrote this really great piece about this 15-year-old basketball prodigy in Arizona, and it's amazing.
All right.
So I should definitely check that out.
This is the Nico Mannion piece, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think I saw you tweeting it out, or I saw somehow. I saw it out there today, so it's on my.
And Ben Ryder of Sports Illustrated, also of Sports Illustrated, wrote a really great Noah Syndergaard profile, which I think is also in this week's issue. So
excellent. I can recommend. There's a piece. It's not a sports piece, but I read it this week. It's from The Observer, and it is by what's the author's name? I wrote it down. Ryan Holiday, and it's I helped create the Milo trolling playbook, and you should stop playing right into it.
This was about the Tucker Max piece, right?
Yes, and he was like the PR guy for the Tucker Max movie, and basically saying how inadvertently, so many people on the left, and I'll include myself on that, kind of play into the right-wing internet troll handbook by their reaction to them. And like the most effective way to treat them is basically to listen to them and make them look, basically just kind of lay out what they say and make them look foolish on their own right, rather than stirring up anger for them, which is kind of what they fuel on. It's a really interesting piece.
Certainly one approach.
Yes. So I can't let you out of here if I don't ask you about your famous social media strategy, and never tweet. Now we all know Twitter's the worst. I mean, we know that.
Absolutely.
But
that's a given.
yeah. So where did that come from? Your never tweet bit.
I think I remember it was maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. I think it was like the day that like Nate Silver he was tweeting about burritos.
Oh, that's right. The burritos. Was this when he was arrested for like eating a burrito or something like that? Or
I don't know if the authorities were involved. I don't remember that angle, but it was actually sort of like, I think he was basically doing a tweet storm. Like tweet storms were not very prevalent back then. I think it was like 2014, but he was basically sort of ticking off as like, he was just going on and on about burritos, and he was numbering his tweets like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I just had the idea. I just did 1, don't tweet. Like, yeah, just stop. And I think that might have been the first time that I did it. And basically, just sort of the overarching philosophy is that, and I'll be the first to admit, Twitter, there's a lot to like. I have made a lot of friends, some connections. I'm a writer, so I can promote my work. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot to like about Twitter.
Right.
But eventually, we all go too far. In all forms of social media, we all eventually say a thing that we should not be saying. And the whole idea behind Never Tweet is basically just keep you honest. Just be willing. Just have that little voice in the back of your head whispering, should you do this? Should we take a breath? Should we go grab a cup of coffee? Walk around the block instead of tweet this potentially bad thing.
Or have a burrito.
Do that can't go wrong. Yeah.
So yeah, some of the proudest moments I've had are when I've had the tweet written and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do this, and I delete it and walk away, and life feels good then. So
what that used to be, the angry like interoffice email, or
right.
The angry email that you would send to a coworker. You were just having a bad day, you were cranky, and you write it out, and you feel better for having written it than you send.
Right.
And that's what the tweet has become these days. Yeah.
So if people want to find you on Twitter, because you promote your work, and to find more about the book, where can they find you?
Well, I can't recommend it, but if they wanted to follow me on Twitter, they can follow me at Erik Mal. That's ErikMal.
All right. Awesome. Erik, looking forward to the book, and thanks for joining me today. This was fun.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.